Well, thank you for coming today, Chris. I really appreciate it because I definitely get different nuggets every time you speak to us. And then I use those when I take really good notes, and I use those notes when realtors come and talk to me. So I love when you present to us.
Well, thanks for having me. I thought what I'd do, Facebook's, when I sent you the message the other day, there's some interesting stuff going on relatively recently on Facebook that has affected the ability to advertise there, I think in a negative way from a real estate standpoint. And you guys probably have, some of you, if you're doing some advertising now, you probably run into this. And I thought I thought for starters, I know people probably have questions and stuff, but I thought for starters, one of the things I wanted to do was share my screen and walk you through the ad creation process. But what I want to do is show you what it looks like if you're not a real estate person, and then show you what it looks like if you are a real estate person, because there's a pretty significant difference that happens with what they're doing. And so I thought I might walk through that a little bit. And then another thing that I wanted to do was sort of talk about what some other possible options are, given what we're seeing on Facebook as far as advertising goes, and maybe a little bit of talk. I talked to Kim the other day. We had a conversation about sort of the climate right now, and I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about that too. But obviously open to questions and stuff too. I hope I can answer them. Things have been so, like I said, things have been so crazy that my head is not 100% in a straight line. So if you guys ask questions, that'd be great, and I'll answer what I can and try to find out answers for what I can't. But does that sound kind of like a plan? So I'm not just going to jabber at you for 2 hours. I figured what I do is demo some stuff and talk to you a little bit about what I'm seeing, and then maybe open up questions and turn it into a discussion about sort of what I'm seeing and what we think might happen, that kind of thing. Does that sound cool? All right. Should we get started? Cool. So Facebook, as we know, has treated real estate differently for a while. And the main concern that they have, they're not doing this just to real estate, by the way. They're doing it in three areas, okay? Housing, credit, employment. Those three categories have hit they're obviously more highly regulated from an advertising standpoint. And Facebook is clearly concerned about legal liability for people advertising on the platform. And so for a long time, they were sort of doing what I would call lip service to these categories. They would sort of monitor them, but not do a whole lot to monitor the advertising on that. In the past few months, what they have done though is they've got a twofold sort of approach to policing these categories. And really the front line approach that they have is that when you're going to add advertising to the site and buy advertising, they're asking you to self-identify whether you fall into one of these special ad categories, they call them. And so there's a checkbox, and if you're in one of those categories, you are supposed to check that box. Now, bear in mind that it's not terribly intuitive when you're going and adding an ad. And so it's the kind of thing that when they first did it, we were putting an ad campaign in for a client, and we went and put it in and we got rejected. And it was because we had not checked that box. What that does is it puts some throttles on what you're able to do. On the back end, though, they're not counting on your honesty, okay? They're not counting on you to check the box. And if you don't check the box, you can just run real estate ads with wild abandon and have it not be pegged. They have artificial intelligence running on the back end of the system. It's reading the content of your ad. It's identifying whether it thinks that ad fits in one of these special categories. And if it does, they will reject the ad, or at the very minimum, put it in review, okay? And if they put the ad in review, what they do is they put notes that say you're in review, and they're very unclear about what it is that's going on. But generally, when you get put into review, and I've had it happen, you'll get a note and it says, we think your ad should be in one of these special categories. And they're going to go ask you to go clarify whether it's in that category or not. Now, it's important to understand that they're bots that are reading these ads. They're not humans. They're programs that run them. They are a blunt instrument. They are not a precision piece of software. So for instance, we run ads for GW Ride Connect, the people who do the commuter services, trying to get people in vans going up and down I-95. The Facebook bots are convinced that those are employment ads. And so every time we run a new ad for those and run them through the review process, they get caught by the Facebook bots and we have to go into review. And here's the problem. Just like that review process is a blunt instrument, they've got some quirkiness on the backside of their sites. So I and a colleague in Portland, Oregon, who I do a lot of work with, have both had our entire ad accounts, and I'm talking 20, 30 clients, temporarily paused by Facebook, because what happened was one of our ads went into review, and for some reason it cascaded through their system and put our entire accounts on lockdown. And it happened to two of us on separate advertisers, no connection between the accounts at all, and it happened within a week. So you can imagine, like, I've got all these people with ads running, and I suddenly get a note that says, by the way, your ad account has been paused and is in review, and we might shut it down. And we had to go in and send notes to Facebook and say, hey, can you take a look at this? And they went and manually reviewed it and said, oh, there was a mistake, and flipped things back on. So that's a lot of explanation to say, if you're doing any Facebook advertising, there is a certain tendency to go and set the campaign up and then let it run for a while. You have to review what's going on, because you don't get a whole lot of alert when they shut these things down. I wouldn't have known that my account was shut down except for the fact that I go in there regularly. And I saw that they had, that for whatever reason, all of my campaigns were paused.
Wow.
So,
I would say 1 out of 3 of our ads gets flagged, but we've never been paused like that. That's interesting.
And I'm curious, so do you run your ads in a special category?
They're not tagged, they're for classes. So no.
Okay. I wouldn't be at all surprised if you eventually get hit as a special category, even coming from the organization. Because like I said, it's all sort of tangential attachment to it. Now, one thing that I don't know is, because we don't do much boosting, because most, by the time somebody calls me, they're past boosting or they're doing their own boosting and they want to do a different ad campaign. What I don't know is what the implications on boosting are for this same policy. My assumption is that it still applies. But Facebook has traditionally been a little bit more loosey-goosey with boosts than they have with actual advertising you're going and buying. The regular review process was not running at the same scale it was when you went and bought an ad. I suspect that they are tightening that up as well, because again, this is all legally driven. They don't want to get sued for violating housing laws, and that's why they're doing this.
When I boost mine, I get flagged.
Okay,
yeah, okay. That's what
I figured that they were doing it. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go and show you on my screen. Oh, Lauren, can you let me share my screen? Oh,
yeah.
How
to do that real quick? I don't see that setting. All right, you Zoom experts.
Is it going to be for the FAR members or no? Because I can look at it.
It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
But I think I should still be able to, maybe if I just make you, that'll do it.
Can you click on me and see if it gives you permission?
Yeah, it doesn't have it says make host is the only thing normal, like close, that might let you do it. So I just made you the host.
Says I'm the host. Okay. I'm embarrassed to admit, we do so much with Google Hangouts, and I do a lot of GoToMeetings and stuff. I am not a Zoom expert, and in fact, I didn't have a Zoom account until about 30 minutes ago. I've been logging into Zoom meetings, but I haven't actually had an account until today. Okay, so let's share screen.
So Chris, before you get started on that,
Sure.
is there a way to set the special category as a default in the ad management?
I haven't seen a way to do that, but I think it's a situation where when you go and create the campaign, it's right at the top, and it's just sort of in your workflow that you do it when you go and create it. Let's see.
I know I always plan for a rejection, so I make sure I go back and check every couple of hours and see if they finally reviewed it, just in anticipation. And usually when I submit it again, when I say this is not for a special category, usually they approve it. So
Okay. All right, are you guys seeing me?
I'm sorry, Chris. I was surprised when Michael and Chris yourself as well indicated when you do your boost, you're tagged. So we do boosts as well. For some odd reason, I haven't been tagged. I don't know why.
Okay, are you guys seeing me?
Yes.
Or seeing my screen? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to so one of the things that some of you guys have heard me talk about before is we work in the Google ad environment, and we typically aren't doing boosts of categories. So where I am right now is in the Fredericksburg Today ad account, and this is the dialogue for creating a brand new ad campaign. Okay, and so basically on this page, and if you guys haven't seen this before, I'll kind of walk through this before. I know some people have seen it before, but I'll kind of walk you through the screen again. This is the workflow that we use to sort of generate ads in the system. And you'll see that at the top of the page here, the very top thing is special ad category. And it says, I'm creating a campaign for ads in a special ad category, ads related to credit, employment, or housing, okay? I am not gonna check that box right now. I'm gonna leave it unchecked, and we're gonna go and run through a campaign and sort of show you what it lets me do. Now, you'll see what's your marketing objective. So Facebook actually, when they're running campaigns, they are actually using these different choices you make at this stage to run the campaign a different way, okay? So for instance, if I am clicking on a traffic campaign, that is designed to push as much traffic as it can to like a website. A traffic campaign is not ideal if you're trying to get more people on your Facebook page. It's great for trying to push people to your standalone website, but it's not really designed to get people engaging with your Facebook presence. If you wanted to do that, you would pick engagement. And engagement actually lets you go and help people sort of engage with your Facebook page, or get more page likes, or get more event responses, okay? So you switch between these two depending on what you're gonna do. Obviously, you guys are probably not doing a whole lot with app installs. You can, however, do a campaign based on video views. So if you've made a video, you can create a campaign and push people to that. You can click them to lead generation. So that's sort of a goes into a lead form workflow. There's also brand awareness. So brand awareness is basically trying to get a lot of ads out there. It basically turns the campaign on high view, but not necessarily high click. And reach is trying to get to the maximum number of people, okay? So if you really want to push ads out and get your voice in front of a ton of people, even though some of those people might not be people who are interested in clicking on your ads, you might pick a reach campaign. Then on the right-hand side, you've got conversions. So a conversion, usually you use conversions for people who are doing retail or e-com. Conversion can be clicked, for instance, if I go and buy something, when I go to land on the thank you page of my e-commerce cart, it will track a conversion there and say, hey, this ad that you bought converted into a sale on the back end. I don't find conversions very useful for folks doing what you guys are doing. You're probably much more interested in lead generation. You can use conversions to track lead generations on the backside, but now that Facebook has added lead generation, it's a little bit cleaner. And then obviously you're not doing catalog sales or store traffic. Store traffic is trying to actually get people feet on the street in your store. But I'm just going to click on traffic because we're going to try to get to a website. This is the sort of the basic simple one to do. Always give your campaign a name, just so you can figure out what it was later on. You can do A/B testing. So an A/B test is just when you run two different sets of ads and see which one works better. And so a lot of people do A/B tests to try to figure out like which ad creative works and which one doesn't work. So that's what this A/B test is. And then there's your campaign budget optimization. So if you've got a campaign that's running that you want to run it indefinitely, you can click a daily budget and just set a number. Maybe I want to run $5 a day worth of advertising. What I typically do is I'll do a scheduled campaign. And so I like my scheduled campaigns to have a lifetime budget, and that way I don't spend more than I intended to spend. But I tend to run a campaign for a month, and then I'll copy the campaign and run it the next month, and copy it again and run it the next month. But a lot of that just has to do with the fact that I'm billing clients. And so we're billing every month, and that's how we run it. If I actually have a campaign for Fredericksburg Today that runs right now, that's running right now, that is for email newsletter signups. And that one, I was running that with just a daily budget of like $2 or something like that. I think I recently switched it over to where it's going to run for like $300 worth, and then it'll stop, and then I'll try to run something new after that. So I would say, and I know I was going to show you the difference between these two, but you guys who know me know I go off on these tangents. One thing that I would say is the daily budget thing where you start the ad and then you don't put a stop date on it. I will tell you that that does lend itself to you getting lazy with your advertising. And what I mean by that is people tend to like put an ad in, set it and forget it. And the problem is if you've got inventory turnover or changes in the market, that kind of thing, what happens is that same ad runs and people get kind of blind to it. So if you use your budget and your ad campaign schedule as a way to discipline yourself into changing your ads. So you say, I'm going to run ads for a month and I'm going to spend $200 in a month. And when that's done, I'm going to put a new ad in. And I'm going to run another $200, but it's sort of enforcing the idea of switching the creative out. People like to see new things. So there's a little bit of a balancing act between frequency of your messaging, seeing the same thing over and over again, but also changing parts of it. So imagine that your logo is in the same place all the time on the ad, but you're changing the pictures, that kind of thing. Or the messaging might say the same thing at the end of the messaging, but you're changing a little piece of it. So anyway, my tangent. So I'm going to go to continue. Now, this is the page where, and again, some of you guys have probably seen this before. This is the page where I do my targeting, okay? And so let's say that I am, let's say that I've got some homes that start at 450, okay? Let's say I'm trying to hit that 450 and higher range. So this is not a starter home. It's a certain audience that I'm trying to reach, okay? So I want to go in and I want to tailor this audience to that, what I think that audience is going to be. So I'm going to go down here in my targeting section. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to target by location. So I'm going to target, I don't know, I'm just going to target 22401, okay? And so that lets me go and target that zip, all right? So I'm going to target just people in the city of Fredericksburg, and I want to actually target my age. So an 18-year-old's not going to be able to afford one of these houses. So I'm going to go and say, you know, I want to target my 35s to, I don't know, let's say 35s to 55s. For whatever reason, I'm not trying to hit a retirement age market. You know, I'm just making stuff up as far as this targeting goes. And I know that women are the ones who are going to really make the decision. So I'm just going to target women. And then down here, I'm going to say luxury real estate. Okay. And so I'm going to target all of these areas. Note on my right-hand side, my audience is defined. It thinks I'm going to reach between 453 to 1.3 thousand people a day. That's based on the budget that I put in there, and it's telling me that it thinks I'm going to get between 1 to 10 link clicks. Okay, and so at this point, I can go in and schedule it, and sort of by default, it's doing a 30-day schedule. I don't know why it's giving me an error with the end date, but we do have an end date in there, so there we go. And so at this point, I could click continue, and it would run this ad, okay? But if I go to continue, so I'm just gonna click that. We'll see if it lets me back out in a second. If I go into this next page and start building my ad out, okay, so let's say that I want to, sorry, my computer's running a little slow here. Let's say I want to do a carousel ad to show different pictures of my houses. And so I can go into this carousel ad and let's see. It's trying to pull from a catalog from a client. It's going to show you hams and sides from the Made in Virginia store right now, but there we go. Imagine these were houses instead of hams. So let's say I built that ad, and let's say that it said homes from 450, and check this out. When I go down to the bottom and submit, every single ad that you submit goes into review. Okay. Most of them go into review, and the computers, the robots, clear them and send them on. Nobody gets an ad that goes live immediately. Everybody gets reviewed. But the automatic review process will catch the ads that say homes from 450, and it will say, whoa, slow down, buddy. You're in a special ad category. You got to fix this, okay? So that's what it looks like if I'm advertising and I haven't clicked my special category thing, but it's not going to let me run the ads. Now, I'm going to go all the way back to my campaign to the beginning here. If my friend, yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to do the exact same campaign, but I'm going to click, I'm creating a campaign for ads in a special ad category. And now I'm picking housing. And you see, I've got 3 choices, right? So same budget, same everything, right? They're going to get the same amount of money. Going to go to continue. Now I'm going to go down to my targeting. It's giving me a custom audience warning. Be sure your audience selection did not discriminate against people based on certain personal characteristics. Note here, zip code selection is unavailable. Location selection must include all areas within a 15-mile radius of any selected city, address, or dropped pin. So instead of being able to do 22401, which it won't even give me a choice now, I have to say Fredericksburg, Virginia. And when I do this, it's drawing a big ass circle around Fredericksburg, Virginia. That's a 15-mile radius circle, okay? So your ability to do zip level targeting is totally limited when you get into this special category. They will not let you do any tighter than what I just did. And of course, in our market, part of the problem with doing radius searches is, I don't know if you can see my mouse, this little piece of Maryland over here. If you do a 15-mile radius out of King George, for instance, most of your circles in Maryland. So the problem with this is that you've got waste, you've got ad waste. You're delivering ads to places that, you know, people over in this little edge are probably not shopping over here. Now they might be, but that's you know, it's not the core, as you guys know better than I do. It's not the core of where you're trying to target. So go ahead.
Are you saying we should target maybe a little south Fredericksburg?
Well,
west a little bit?
what I'm saying is that you have to take into account that you're going to have ad waste. Okay,
Right.
You're going to have some ad waste. Age, 18 to 65. I cannot target any tighter than 18 to 65. Okay, so if I want to do retirement home, retirement community advertising, can't do it. Because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be advertising for people 18 to 55. You know, all of that's going to be waste. Gender, can't target by gender. Got to target all genders. Not as big a deal, in my opinion, but these other two, the geo and the age, are problematic, I think, from a targeting standpoint. Now, my demo information, so my detailed targeting, this becomes a crapshoot. It will let me pick some things, but what we've learned is there are options that are gone.
Yeah.
And you don't know what they are until you go looking for them. You almost have to search in one, and that's actually for somebody like me who does campaigns for people who are not in real estate and does campaigns for people who are. I am constantly in a scenario where I'm like, I know I targeted that same demographic yesterday, and it's not there on this real estate advertisement, and it's because that demo has been taken out, and some of it is nonsensical. Okay, what's been taken out. So you see that there's a significant difference between what you're able to target if you're not a special category and what you're able to target if you are a special category. So what does this mean for you guys? It's not an art. Well, it means a couple things. Number one, it's not an argument to not use Facebook at all. Okay. But what you have to accept is that your level of waste in your spend is going to go up significantly. Your ability to target tightly is going to go way, way down. So your budget that you're spending on Facebook is not being used as wisely as it might have been a year ago. A year ago, you could do all of this targeting. And now you can't do a lot of it. So that's one significant issue. The other thing that's very significant, in my opinion, is, and I've run into this actually not in real estate, but I've run into it in employment. There are people out there selling advertising services that are offering targeting, and if they tell you they're able to target, if they're getting ready to sell you a Facebook advertisement, and they are offering to target you at the level that we just saw you're not able to do, ask questions, ask good questions, make sure that they're able to do what they say they're able to do on Facebook. We had an employment client that had used another provider a couple of years ago, and this provider was still pitching the ability to target at that level. And it was the first time we'd hit the employment limitation. So we went in to put the campaign in and realized they were in their special category. We had to go back to the client and say, we can't target at the level that these guys said they could. And they're like, well, they were able to do it. I'm like, they're not going to be able to do it anymore. You know, that's all gone now, at least on the Facebook environment. So this, in my mind, is a pretty significant change in the Facebook world. Again, it's not an argument not to use it, but it is an argument to think about what other kinds of options you might have for advertising that still are able to do that level of targeting. because there are folks out there that are able to do display advertising, targeting, and other stuff like that, that are, because they're doing it on a campaign by campaign basis, they're able to look at every campaign they're doing and sort of say, yes, we feel like this particular campaign is well within the guidelines of falling into the law. And that's the problem with Facebook. They're having to automatically apply rules across thousands and thousands and thousands of people wanting to advertise. And so their system has to be a blunt instrument. There's not a really good way to make it surgical how they're doing that. But there are other people who are doing advertisements that are much more targeted, that that you can do sort of that level of targeting. So I want to show you guys something. This is you may have heard the term native advertising. So native advertising is advertising that looks like, or it's content, but it's content that's wrapped as sponsored content. Let me see if I can find, let's see. So this is the Associated Press's site, or a screenshot of the Associated Press's site. See this ad that says sponsored content? The COVID-19 shouldn't halt a college education. This is content that's paid for, and it's actually targeted into different content sites. And they're able to do the kind of demographic targeting and behavioral targeting that that you are not able to do on Facebook right now. So what they're doing is they're doing contextual targeting. As you walk across the web looking at different things and you hit different sites, there are little beacons that are sort of seeing your browser, and they're tracking what you do. We all know this, right? They're tracking what you do, and what they're looking for, they really don't care about personally identifiable information, because what they're looking for is behavior patterns that they can put ads in front of. They're able to see if somebody's shopping for a house. I mean, shopping for real estate is a very well-defined behavior right now on these platforms. So they're able to say, I want to target somebody who is shopping for a home right now, or maybe somebody who's viewed 30 real estate sites in the past week, that kind of thing. And so what these guys are doing is they're delivering content like this, and you can do it with banner ads too. They're delivering content into people's sort of browse through the web. And so the ads that you see, it's just like the ads that you went on the website and you were shopping for something, and then the ad for that same thing shows up, 3 sites later on a banner ad on the right-hand side. It's the same kind of behavioral targeting that you see there. That's kind of retargeting, tracking what people are doing and trying to deliver ads. The ability to do the kind of targeting that you do on Facebook is available there, and the real estate limitation doesn't really exist as long as you're not doing anything that's like blatantly in violation of the housing advertising rules that are out there. So I'm actually seeing a lot of people who are trying to use things like native or contextual banner ads across the web to supplement what they had been doing on Facebook, because they're able to get a much tighter target. And particularly I'm seeing that for people who are specializing in certain areas. If they've, like I said, if they're doing retirement community homes, if they're doing big ticket homes that, if you've got a $3 million house, you really don't want to be putting that in front of people who have a $200,000 budget. It's wasted ad money. So that's one of the things that we're seeing more of. Another thing that we're seeing more of, or conversations that we're having more of, is the idea of like, who do we target? I think obviously you want to target people who are showing the behavior of shopping for homes. That makes a lot of sense. But one of the discussions that we've been having lately is, should we also be targeting people who are searching for mortgage information? Because a lot of shoppers are going to look for the mortgage information before they go shopping for a house. So if you can get your ads in front of those people, it might make sense to add that to who you're targeting, in addition to people who are currently shopping. So you get them earlier and you get more frequency with that shopper. Your goal is to get them as early in the process, as an agent. Your goal is to get them as early in the shopping process as you can. So if that research is starting not with looking at houses, but with looking at mortgages, you want to try to get those folks and target those folks. And then you can get them as they're shopping for homes and stuff too. So that conversation has been one, again, as Facebook has started to change what they're doing, we find ourselves having more conversations about, how should we be doing the targeting for this particular campaign, so we're getting the right people and only the right people that we want to reach. And a lot of that has to do with this geography. I mean, the geography around where we are is problematic because of the river, because of the way I-95 works, because of having that big chunk of Quantico kind of sitting between us and North Stafford. You really have to have the ability to draw some lines on geography to really get the targeting you want. And that's limited by having to do like a 15-mile radius. I've talked a lot. Deep breath. What questions have I raised?
I mean, is Google ads any better for targeting?
We're not seeing the same kind of limitations on Google ads that we have on Facebook. I'm not running into the same throttles. The creative that you can do on Google is not quite as neat as what you can do on some of the Facebook advertising, but I do think that doing Google advertising, I still think makes a lot of sense for most people. And if you're not, we haven't looked at this in a while, but when you go to Google, we'll see who shows up. So I'm gonna search for a houses in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Let's see, under $300,000. Let's just see what happens. So these top 4 results are paid advertisements. So that's Lycata Group. I probably misspelled or mispronounced that. Mark Rodriguez, Wykert, and then a site called Find Homes in Northern Virginia. So all these folks are paying for Google ads. If I click on one of them, they're paying for it when I click on it. Sometimes you see ads on the right-hand side show up as well, but this particular search didn't register that. Everyone below these top 4, these are actually natural they're natural results. So Exit Realty is right up there on top. Bob Houston, 21 Classic, and then Zillow. I'm sure you guys probably recognize some of these people. And I'm betting there are a few people you don't recognize, because some people have very, very aggressive Google budgets and they show up in markets where they don't necessarily operate normally. But yeah, so Lauren, I do think that having Google as part of your budget does make sense. And I've always sort of made the argument that you probably should have some Google budget. The problem that we run into is, and I understand it, you guys are not sitting on massive marketing war chests that you can go and say, I'm going to spend $2,000 on Facebook and $2,000 on Google. And the problem with most of these platforms is if you do less than about $250, $300 a month in advertising, you might as well just save your money and buy some signs. There's a floor. There's a floor in the advertising world that below that floor, you're not getting enough frequency. You're not getting the ads in front of enough people to make sense. So you have to go in and say, like if somebody comes in to us and says, we want to do Facebook and Google, then I typically say, all right, well, you got to get above $500 before you even think about splitting a budget. And really you should be 1,000, if you're going to split between the two, you should be spending $1,000, 500 on Google and 500 on Facebook. So it's kind of one of those situations where what we do with some people is say, let's try Google for $500 for a month or two, and then let's switch over and spend that 500 on Facebook for a month or two, and see which one works better for you, rather than trying to take a small budget and split it into two pieces and then hope that we're getting enough frequency on either one to work. What other questions do you guys have?
I have a question about retargeting using emails, because isn't that something, I know you can do it with certain platforms. Can you do that with Google?
So when you say retargeting using email, do you mean like if I saw your email, you're then going to target me?
Or if, I guess if you have your list of client emails, is there a place to upload that? Maybe not your client emails.
That's a good question.
Prospecting
So
list.
It's been a while since I've done it, but there is a way to upload lists of users to Google, which you then retarget. The problem that you run into anytime you want to do something with a list you've got is you've got to hope that that email address has been tagged somewhere so the system knows who it is. Because, you know, not everybody's got an email attached to the cookie that goes on their browser. And so the browser doesn't necessarily know who you are. But here's the thing. If you've already got them in an email list, you've got a way, way better way to target those guys, and that's to send those emails out. You know, one of the things that I've talked about in our sessions before, but I always like to emphasize is this world of advertising now is very much a world of hunters and farmers. And understanding the difference between which of your customers you should be farming and which ones you should be hunting is pretty significant. So if you have followers on Facebook, you've already got their contact information. You can message to those people essentially for free.
Exactly.
You know, and so, and if you've got their email addresses, the only thing you're paying for is a way to send emails out. So Mailchimp for less than 2,000 people is free. And so your communication with anyone that you already have their contact information, that's where you should not be spending a ton of money, because you've already got them, and it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money. The only money the money you should be spending should be your time and effort in sort of generating content that's useful to those folks. And so whether that's a list of all the new homes that you think are really cool that have just hit the market that might appeal to your customer base, or information about, you know, fixing your home up to sell it, that's the sort of thing that is, I think, very, very useful and interesting. We've not really talked about email marketing before. Does anybody on the call use Mailchimp or Constant Contact? Okay, so raise your hand if you do Mailchimp. Okay, so are you guys familiar with segmenting in Mailchimp? Have you ever heard of segmenting?
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I haven't dug into it yet, but I know what you're talking about.
You want to see what it is, because it's cool.
Chris,
Yeah, sure.
Chris,
Yeah.
Chris, before you go there, I just have a generic question, sort of piggybacking on Lauren's question.
Sure.
Would you say, Chris, and Michael may also be able to chime in, would you say that Google and Facebook have monopolized, help me with that.
Monopolized, yeah.
Yes, with just this marketing. If you are, you know, if you have a smaller marketing budget, are there any apps or are there any offshoots that's not Google or Facebook? And I'm glad you brought up Mailchimp, because we use that sort of in our marketing, and then we do use Facebook, and we use it from the standpoint of developing campaigns and boosting those campaigns. But is that just sort of the players, and either you're working with those players or you need to go back to first base?
That's a great question. My role in all of my years of doing this, and you know, there is gray in here now. My kids keep pointing it out to me. I've been doing the digital advertising long enough where I've seen players come and go. Okay. I was doing this when MySpace was a thing, and I've seen that come and go. Our rule of thumb is always go where your audience is. And for a large part, you have to bear in mind that nearly 100% of web traffic uses Google at some point during the day. Nearly everybody uses Google. The people that use these third party or even Bing, they're outliers.
Mhm.
So basically 100% of the online audience is on Google, particularly in the US, not in China,
Okay.
but you're not selling homes in China. So virtually 100% of that audience is there. So that's an argument that there's audience there, you should be there. And luckily Google is very cost effective. You can be in Google cheap. There's a big audience in Facebook. And that's why Facebook has attracted so many dollars right now, that they've attracted a very large audience. And, unfortunately for us, because of the amount of control they have, a lot of that audience is in the age demographic that's in the home buying demographic. Younger folks are not Facebook users, but people my age are, so unfortunately they're there. Beyond those two, the best way to reach a wide audience is doing things like I was talking about with native advertising, or what's called a banner ad network. Because what that does is it shows banner ads on multiple websites depending on where people are going. So it's, they're on CNN and the ads are showing up. They're on AP, the ads are showing up. They're on Fine Woodworking and the ads show up. And so buying through that means you're not having to pick one player with a particular audience. And so that makes sense to do a buy. Beyond that, when you start talking about apps and other platforms and a marketing spend, where I start going is, do I know where the audience is in that particular area right now? So let me give you an example that's not real estate, and then we'll look at one that is real estate. So for many years, if you were hiring people, you could buy Google ads, and you probably should. You buy Facebook ads, you probably should. You also needed to buy an employment ad on Monster.com, because Monster.com was the top career website on the web. So people, they had audience and they had intent, right? There were lots of people and they had a shared intent. They were looking for jobs. And so it made sense to spend money with them. Indeed.com got smart and grew and grew and grew. And so what happened is Indeed got here, Monster ended up here, and suddenly all of my people with the same intent had moved, and I needed to move my money. If I have a limited budget, I move my money then from Monster to Indeed. And then I keep my eyes on what's going on and see who's next, who's trying to get Indeed off the podium and take that spot. Same thing happened in the real estate world. For many years, Realtor.com was the place that had audience and intent. That's where almost everybody had listings, were looking for listings, and where they were doing their shopping. Zillow, take Zillow's Zestimate and all that crap out of the picture. Zillow did one key thing. They garnered audience and intent. And they became, and I haven't looked at the numbers lately, I think they still are the largest real estate website right now. With that kind of numbers and that kind of intent, you probably should have some money there. But you should be watching and seeing what other people are doing. What we do sometimes with people is we're watching and we'll say, okay, we know you got to have some money here. We know you got to have some money here. Let's reserve some experimental ad spend and try it on some of these new platforms. Because if you see somebody out there that you like, if a lot of your buyers or sellers are saying, hey, I was on such and such a site and I found you, or I was on such and such a site and look at that, and you're going, there's something there. Reserve a little bit of budget and become an early mover on some of those platforms. And you can play around, but don't try to throw all of your money at it being an early adopter, because the number of people aren't there, and you do need the number of people. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect sense.
Cool. Any other questions along those lines?
I actually do have a question. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about on Facebook. So
Okay.
when you are targeting your audience as a real estate agent, do you think it's better to make a push to your website, or is it better to make a push to your Facebook page? Do you see a lot of, which one do you think is more likely for somebody to get involved with?
That's a really, really good question. That's a great question, actually. This one that I struggle with, but my opinion is, as long as you are actively maintaining your Facebook page, and when I say that, I mean you're putting new content up, you're responding to people when they send you messaging on Facebook. If you're doing all of that, I find that your bang for buck pushing from Facebook to your Facebook page is much, much better than trying to push to a website. The people are already on Facebook. If they're going from Facebook to Facebook, they're in the same headspace. They're already surfing in that space. You're not making them take this leap to a website. And so I really, in my ideal world, when I do a Facebook campaign, I'm trying to push them into someone's Facebook page and not off-site onto their website. I just feel like I've got the engagement levels. Now, that being said, if you're not keeping your Facebook page updated and you're spending more time and effort on your website, you should be pushing them there. But I think given my druthers, I would always point them to Facebook off of a Facebook advertisement than anything else. Now, I would not say that of any other platform. If you buy programmatic or the contextual ads that I was talking about, if you buy Google ads, never point those at Facebook. Always point those at your website. But on Facebook, point to Facebook if you can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would add one more thing. If you're pointing to your website, make sure you're pointing to a good spot on your website. I mean, you want them to go to and take an action and not just see your website in general, because they're going to get there and they're not going to know what to do. But to his point, Google is Google. They don't like Facebook. They're competitors. So Google doesn't want you pushing to Facebook. Facebook doesn't want you pushing to Google for those reasons.
Absolutely. And remember, not everybody's a Facebook user. So if you're pointing from Google to a Facebook page, you run the risk of having somebody land on a login page to Facebook and not wanting to go in there. I think your point about that website is huge. You should always point to a landing page with your advertising. You should never point to your home page. And that landing page should generally have a very strong call to action in the top screen. Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to look at this Mailchimp thing?
Yeah, I do.
Cool. So I'm going to show you that these guys I've been working with for years, and I know that they're okay with me sort of showing you back end because they're not actually in your industry, but I think they're an interesting one to show because we're doing some segment work with these guys. So this is a site. This is a client called Shop Eat Surf. And some of you guys have heard me talk about them before. They're a business publication for people in the board sports industry. So surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding, and all of the associated fashion. So Billabong and Zoomies and that kind of place. That's the industry that uses these guys. And so they have a daily email news list that they send out. And their business model is that to use their site fully, you become an executive edition user. An executive edition user pays a subscription fee, and that subscription fee lets you go and get content that everybody else can't get. So it's important to know those sort of that explanation when we go and look at these segments. So I'm going to go manage their audience, and you see they've got 8,343 contacts.
Guys, I have to jump off.
Okay.
I got the listing I got an offer on that I said we hadn't had but one showing. We shared the showing, so we just got an offer in. Thank you, guys.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right, thanks.
Bye, Bruce.
So I'm going to go view all contacts. So in Mailchimp, you get a basic set of contacts, first name, last name, email address, obviously, but it's possible in their system to add additional fields that you can collect, and you can either do them have the person put it in when you add them, but you can also go in and add information on the people on your own. So these guys go in and they have fields like job title, company, which email list they signed up for, company type. And this one is the one that I kind of want to show you. See where it says active EE?
Mm-hmm.
So active EE is a field of the table that tells them whether that person is currently an active Executive Edition subscriber or a canceled Executive Edition subscriber. And your inclination when you're using Mailchimp, right, would be to make two audiences, right? One audience that's an active EE subscriber and one audience that is a non-active subscriber. Here's a problem. Mailchimp will make you pay for it twice. Those lists get bigger. The other thing is you want to make sure that all of your data is in one place and you're keeping track of that stuff in one place. So they really want you to use what's called segments to manage this stuff. So what I can do is I can set up segments in the system and I can then send emails only to that segment. So I'll show you. I can go to new segment. And by the way, I'm going to give you an example of what you guys can use that can do with this in a second. So I'm going to make a new segment and I'm going to say, okay, I want to make a segment of active EE and I want active EE to only contain the word active. So I'm going to make, so what this is this is a segment of just active EE subscribers. And I'm going to click preview. And this is telling me that 964 contacts match my conditions. And so if I click Save Segment, it will save that and I will be able to go in the future and view just the people who have that category, okay? I can also click on Send Campaign and just right when I made that segment, I can go and click and send a campaign straight to that segment and to no one else in my contact list, okay? Hugely helpful to go and break your list up. So what does this mean for you guys? Well, you have, I'm sure, an email list and some of those people bought homes with you, okay? You were a buyer's agent, okay? Some of the people on your list were people that you sold homes for, okay? And maybe some of the people on your list, we have a visitor. Some of the people on the list were people that are maybe selling prospects. You can make columns for each of those items and you can then create segments and send. So let's say that you only want to send an email out to people that you are the buyer's agent for. You go in, make a segment for my buyers and send emails out just to your buyers. You can make a segment for my buyer prospects, send an email just out to those people. Your sellers or potential sellers, those are the ones, make a segment for potential sellers and then send them market information. Because your buyers, you probably don't want to say the same thing to a buyer that you do to a seller.
Right.
And so you can use these segments to go and break your list up however you want and use this thing to manage your customer list. Hugely, hugely helpful. And by the way, you can go and export the segment too. So you can go and spit out a list of the segment. Mailchimp has gotten really...
That's dabbling in CRM territory.
Well, yeah, you can use Mailchimp as a poor man's CRM very, very easily. And in fact, if you've not been in Mailchimp bouncing around too much, when I go to campaigns now, I'm a big Mailchimp fan, by the way. Constant Contact's fine. It's but Mailchimp, I really like some of the stuff that they're doing. So in Mailchimp, I can go to, create a campaign. And not only can I do an email campaign, but I can set up Facebook, Instagram, and Google ads inside of Mailchimp and they'll run them. I can make a landing page in Mailchimp that I go and use to collect new contacts. I can do a survey now. I can do social media posts. I can do a sign up form. This is the one that kills me. I can get them to send a postcard and they'll send actual physical postcards out. Now, you can get it way cheaper going through a printer locally and going through those guys. But if you have your email or your addresses already in Mailchimp and want to do something fast and get it rolling, this will do it for you. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Mailchimp, and there's other stuff. I'll just go to email real quick. So Mailchimp not only has regular email campaigns, but they also have these automated campaigns. So like you can have it automatically send a birthday wish out to people on your list, and it'll just, as long as you've got a birthday field in your database, it'll just start sending them birthday emails. You don't have to worry about it. When they sign up, you can get them to send an email out, that kind of thing. You know, so there's some cool stuff that it will do. You know, pop-up form subscribers, different stuff like that. For e-commerce, if you guys were selling stuff, it'll even do the abandoned cart thing that says, hey, you left these things in your cart. You sure you don't want to buy them? So, you know, obviously you're not putting homes in carts, but it does have that functionality. So yeah, it's pretty cool. They've done quite a bit over time with how this all works. What other questions do you guys have?
What does it take to set up a Google ad? Do you have to have an AdWords account?
Yeah, so go to Google AdWords, and you'll sign up for an account here. And you can have multiple accounts under your account if you need to. You'll see a lot under mine. If it'll load.
And there aren't any images on Google Ads, right?
You can actually create display ads on Google. Yeah, so yeah, you can create display ads, and they sort of responsively resize themselves based on where they are. So if the page loads, let's see what happens here. Maybe. I found that when I'm video conferencing, it tends to slow everything down a little bit. Here, let's look at, yeah. I was going to try to look at our, yeah, well, let's look at GWRC. Maybe. So GW Ride Connect is that commuter group I was telling you about, and you know they're maybe it will cooperate. I went to the wrong thing. We'll see if it loads up. There we go. So when you go to make a new ad, you go and click. Oh, shoot, I'm on the wrong screen. Sorry. It's doing everything like in delay here. Okay. So I'm on the campaign screen and I go to make a new campaign. And just like with Facebook, they have different sorts of things they're doing. I'm just going to do website traffic. And once I do that, I can pick whether I want a search ad or a display ad. So Lauren, you were asking, the display ad is what's going to let me do graphical stuff, or a shopping ad, or video. And video is actually YouTube, so it'll run the ads on YouTube. And then discovery ads, these are actually brand new. I haven't seen that button before. That Google does this to me all the time. I do a demo and there's a new button as soon as I open it. So those are ads that show up apparently across YouTube, Gmail, Discover, and more. But I'm just going to click on search. and you go and you put your website in. That tells it where it's trying to drive you. And when I go see where it says search network and display network, so if you don't have both of these checked, your ads will only show up when somebody goes and searches on Google itself. If they're on display, the display network, they'll show up on other websites across the web that are using Google to feed ads. So Fredericksburg.com, for instance, uses Google. Washington Post, I think, uses them too. They use them for what's called remnant advertising, so they don't sell all of their inventory usually, and so they use Google to backfill inventory, ad inventory. So you can actually buy ads on Google sometimes way cheaper than you could if you went directly to the publications, but you're getting their secondary inventory. You're not getting their primary inventory. I can go put my location in. So here's where I can do my 22401. And so right here, you see there's my zip code. I can say I want to target it. And then I can enter another location. So I can go to, Spotsylvania, but I also can go to nearby Spotsylvania County, and it will show me some other locations that are nearby. So yeah, so right here, Spotsylvania, I can target that. So you just pick your zip codes and target that stuff. You can choose a language. You can also pick audiences. So this is a relatively new thing on Google. This lets you do some of the same targeting that you do on Facebook. So you'll see right here, this is the cool thing about Google. Their bots have already looked at GW Ride Connect, which I typed in on the last screen, and it knows that I'm talking about travel, business travel, and public transit and that sort of thing. It read the website. It's got an index already of what the site's about. It already knows what I might want to target. And in fact, it's got a tab for ideas that I can go and pick. And so it kind of tells me some things that I want to target. On Google, it's a little different from Facebook. So on Google, it basically says, I can either target these different areas, so it will only show the ads to people who meet those criteria, or it does what's called observing. And so what observing does is it says, I'm going to send the ads based on what my magical robots think people are going to work. But with observation, it says, if any of these people fall in these categories, you can actually say, I'm willing to bid more money for somebody who's in the bus and rail travel, who's showing that behavior. So it's a way for you to sort of affect where your advertising is going to run more. But you can do either one. Set a budget for each day. They don't have the lifetime budget cap that Facebook does, which drives me insane because I like having a budget cap so I don't spend too much. You can focus on conversions or clicks. If you were going to do conversions, you would need to put a little tag on your website on your lead form that showed it as a conversion, so Google would know that it was a conversion. And you can set a maximum cost per click. So if I'm selling $5 widgets, I don't want to be paying $10 for a click because I'm losing money for every click. So you can set a maximum cost per click bid. This doesn't come into play for people who are more service industry as often as it does people who are actually selling merchandise, where there's a very clear point of diminishing returns on how much money you make on everything you sell. Down here, I can do things like put specific links to parts of my website. So let's say that your website had Spotsylvania listings, Stafford listings, Fredericksburg listings. You could actually put links to each of those sections and they'd show up in your ad. You can put some more business information on your ad. You can also put a phone number, and they'll actually put a tracking phone number if you want. So it'll tell whether somebody called you from this ad because it'll put a unique phone number on it.
Do you think that get up to 15% higher click-through rate by showing additional information, is that because they do something, is that because the information itself, or that they give the ad more consideration when it's got more info on it?
My guess is it's a little of both, to be honest. Google is infamously closed-mouthed about how their algorithm works. And so we can never know for sure. But my guess is that, well, the bottom line on Google is if Google makes a suggestion to you on ways to improve your ads, you should probably follow it. And here's why I say that. Google's whole business model is based on what we're doing right now. This is the lion's share of the billions of dollars that they make. Is this advertising system that we're interacting with right now. That system is designed, and the algorithm that it uses is designed to get as close to a 1-to-1 ratio between number of times an ad is seen and number of times an ad is clicked, because they make money every time this happens, okay? And so their system is trying to optimize the efficiency of these ads. So every time somebody sees an ad, they click on it and go find out more. And so their system, when they make suggestions, it's because they've got data that tells them you should do this. And I always try to follow it if I can, because they're usually right. So what happens when you build an ad is it actually gets you to put keywords in. So, you know, I could put keywords in like real estate and housing and homes in Fredericksburg. Oop, I got to spell Fredericksburg correctly. So I put keywords in here, and when people are searching for those keywords or behavior is showing those keywords, it will trigger the ad being shown to those people. You can also get keyword ideas. So, you know, let's just use our commuter and see what it says. It's running real slow today, but yeah, you see that it's coming up with suggested keywords, and you can go and just click the pluses and add the keywords.
I'm curious how many people on the call have run Google Ads before. If you have, raise your hand.
Yeah. I don't see very many real estate people in this world. The funny thing is your service folks, your HVAC guys, your construction trades guys, they live and die on Google AdWords. Exterminators, they spend a lot of money right on this, and they spend very little on Facebook. Real estate, I find, spends a lot of money on Facebook and very little on Google. And I'm not convinced that that's justified, if that makes sense. I'm not convinced that that breakdown is anything other than cultural. You know, the real estate folks, it was so easy to sort of make a page on Facebook and kind of do that thing, and you've got so much control over it versus what you have even on your website, that it makes a lot of sense. And you've got content you can put on Facebook. What's a plumber going to say on Facebook, right? They're not really able to create as compelling a presence on Facebook as you guys could. And so the dynamic is a little off whack there. Once you get your keywords in, you go in here and you put headlines. So, you know, commuter, vans, and you can put multiple headlines in, you can put multiple descriptions in, and it builds these ads. And the ads, they'll actually show you how they look on different views. So this is what a display ad would look like. That's what it looks like on mobile. And that's what it looks like on desktop. The funny thing about Google ads is they're not very pretty looking, but they work. And so they can be very, very highly effective. And again, just like with Facebook, you're setting your own budget. So it's not like you're having to go in and know that you're going to invest $3,000. You can go in and say, look, I'm going to spend $250 on Facebook or on Google this month and run those ads and not, blow out your budget. Yeah, so I'm not going to finish this because I'm actually getting real close to being done with the ad, and it's going to try to run it, and I already have their campaign running. We're trying to burn through budget for these guys because a lot of people I worked with put their advertising on hold, which you can imagine, with the virus situation. A lot of people put their advertising on hold because they were worried about the budget. Here's the trick, though. Web traffic, from everything we can tell, is at a record high right now. A lot of people are not spending money on advertising right now. So it is one of the biggest buyer's markets in online advertising that I've ever seen right now. The cost per click and the cost per 1,000 views on the web have really dropped pretty significantly. There are a lot of new users on the web. I've got a client running right now who's paying 3 cents per click for a real estate advertising campaign, actually, on Facebook. It's astonishing where the price is right now. So if you are even mildly optimistic and you've got some budget to spend, you could do worse than spending it on some ads right now. The cost per 1,000 is great, and there are lots of new users on the web, and it's just a really good time to be an ad buyer. And I think it's going to last for a couple to 3 more months, and then I think things might start shifting. But I think we're going to be in a pretty good place from an ad standpoint for the next few months. As far as having available inventory. And, you guys are in a place where, I don't know how everybody's feeling really about what the market's going to do. I can tell you that my smart retail clients are realizing, like, hey, it's time to put some money in ads because things are going to blow up. And I want to make sure I'm positioned well for that. And I am hearing that from retail folks. They're doing real high e-commerce traffic right now. I talked to an appliance guy today who said he can't keep appliances in the store. People are buying. I think they're stuck with they're realizing how much they hate their current refrigerator or dishwasher right now, and they're because they're dealing with it all day long. And so he said he's having a hard time keeping appliances in stock. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic from an economic standpoint, but it's definitely a good time to be buying ads.
That's awesome to hear. I wouldn't have thought that. I thought everyone knew everyone was at home on the internet. So
yeah, no. Well, I think what it is I think a lot of people are watching their budgets. I think they're worried about spending the money, and I get that. I totally get that. But history has shown that the people who market in times when everybody else is pulled back, they tend to get an advantage that lasts. Getting that brand awareness right now, is going to stick around.
And how long and at what proposed budget would you suggest starting to run your first Google ad?
Well, my floor that I tell people, if you're going to do them on your own, your floor needs to be around $250 per month. I wouldn't go much lower than that. I think you get diminishing returns. 500 is a great number, but 250 is probably where I would set the floor. It's pretty easy to do. You can sign up on your own, and like I said, it's google.com/AdWords. You give them a credit card number. What happens with your credit card is they'll start charging you, and they'll do it like $50 at a time at the beginning. So be prepared. You'll be like, why do they keep charging me? what they're doing is making sure your card is legit. And as you start running ads over time, it'll go from like $50 before they charge you to like $100 before they charge you. And you'll eventually get to the point where they only charge you every $500 you spent or at the end of the month. But don't be alarmed when they start hitting your card, because it is a little weird when it first starts. They're sort of probing the card to make sure it's not stolen or that kind of thing. But it's pretty straightforward to use. I find it pretty effective. It can get addictive too. I know some people who are in there every day looking at how they're doing. And do be aware that, and actually I think this is a really good point. One of the problems we run into with Google ads and even Facebook ads to some extent, but it's more so with Google, is let's say that you've got a $250 budget and you're delivering ads to Spotsylvania, Stafford, Fredericksburg. And remember, nearly 100% of the people use Google at some point. The odds of you seeing your own ad with a $250 spend in a given month are exceptionally low, particularly in real estate or other popular areas. Now, I have a client who all he does is takes construction forklifts apart and sells parts for construction forklifts. If I go search for some of the terms we bought for him, he sees his ad. But that's because there's not many people searching for construction forklift parts. And so if I search construction forklift parts in Fredericksburg, I'm almost definitely going to see his ad. But real estate clients, the biggest sort of objection or problem I run into when we're working on a Google ad is, hey, I don't see my ad. How do I know this is working? And my answer is always, well, let's go look at the reports. And we go and we look at the reports and we see, I'll just go back and close this campaign because I don't want to actually run that anyway. We'll just look at a campaign for GWRC. So they have a campaign running right now. This is actually showing you the number of clicks they had each day. You can also see the number of impressions they had over the last 30 days. So you can see that the ad was seen a certain number of times, it was clicked a certain number of times, what the click-through rate is, how much it's costing per click. All of this stuff gets tracked, and you can use these reports to see what people are, looking at. But the chance of you seeing your own ad is very, very small. And you just have to, there has to be a certain degree of faith in the system to let these Google ads work. I find it's much easier to see your ad on Facebook, even though the same math is often the case. But right now, like, I'm seeing a couple things that we're running. I'm seeing a lot that I'm in the demographic for. And I think it's just because, like I said, a lot of people have pulled back their spend. And so people who are doing 22401 targeting are hitting a lot of us more frequently than we would, than we would be normally seeing. I'm helping with a campaign right now. I won't say who it is, but they're running some ads, and I've been actually surprised at how many impressions they've gotten. I was not expecting them to get the number of impressions they did. It's just because the inventory is available. What other kinds of tech questions do you guys have? Have we covered some stuff you were hoping to cover today? Because like I said, I know I'm all over the map, so I'm hoping this is helpful. I'm, as I say every time I meet with you guys, I'm willing to answer any question. I might have to make up my answer, but I'm willing to answer anything you ask me. I could talk about websites. I could talk about things that I'm seeing on Facebook that aren't working. I have a client right now who, if he doesn't start posting more stuff on his Facebook page, I'm probably going to have to tell him we're going to stop the campaign, because we're running Facebook ads for someone who's not really putting content on their Facebook page. And I know that the campaign's not really going to succeed unless he's doing that. And so I do reach a point with some clients where I have to say, look, we're leading these horses to water, but the well is dry. And I'm not willing to lead a horse to water with a dry well, because it makes me look bad and it makes you think I'm not doing my job. And I'd rather not run the ads than have you be disappointed that you're not getting a response, when I know that the reason you're not getting a response is your Facebook page isn't being updated, or, like you were saying earlier, the web page that I'm pointing to is maybe not user friendly or doesn't have a call to action. And so, that has a huge effect on how effective these campaigns can be.
Chris, what's the industry saying in terms of the productivity, I guess, between print ads versus digital ads? This is going to be good.
In most markets, the newspaper's market share has dropped to a level pre-coronavirus. Their market share had dropped to a level that was frankly unsustainable.
Okay.
And Corona, in my opinion, is going to be a death blow for a lot of newspapers. I'm not speaking about locally, because I don't know their exact financial situation. I mean, as you know, you may not know, Berkshire Hathaway, who was their owner, sold the Freelance Star to Lee Enterprises
Right.
A few months ago. And frankly, we were those of us who were in the newspaper industry, some of you guys might not know, I was in the newspaper industry for years. There could not have been a bigger vote of no confidence than having Warren Buffett sell. He lent money to the company that he sold them to get it off his hands. He gave them a loan to clear this off of his books. That was, to me, and to a lot of people who sort of watch the industry, that was the really, really a kick in the teeth for that industry. The problem is that their demographics, well, frankly, I'm 45, we'll say. I'm probably the youngest generation. My age range is the youngest generation who may possibly have a print newspaper habit. And a lot of people my age don't have that habit at all. People who are in a younger demographic, which I know that there are some on this call. I mean, y'all aren't newspaper subscribers, are you?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, we live next to a barber shop and get all their magazines and
there you go. Yeah. So all the home shopping's happening online now. We're getting through right now a period where our willingness to do online communication, like what we're doing right now, has gone from, let's say, 25% of the population to more like 75% of the population in the US. You've got people who never would have gotten on a Zoom call before this all hit, in demographics much older than we would normally think of, who are now like Zooming with the grandkids on a regular basis. This whole thing has been a game changer. And so if you're in print, you're not in a great place. And I would actually argue if you're in traditional TV, you're not in a great place. Streaming video is a big deal. And that's the other thing. You can buy ads on connected TVs now. So if you've got a smart TV, and you like watch Hulu, we're big Hulu watchers. Apple TV now, where you can stream Apple TV, you can buy ads on those networks very inexpensively now. And so back in the days of wanting to be a television advertiser, you're looking at a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 spend to really effectively do TV ads back in the day. And now you can do it for a couple $1,000s a month.
That's very interesting, because we were looking at advertising, I think on Pandora, only like a year or so ago when we had some radio ads available from NAR, and the minimum campaign value for that was like $6 was the minimum to run a campaign.
Yeah, what's happened is, and this happens on almost every platform like that. I don't know where Pandora is. I haven't looked at pricing. What happens is when these new platforms come out, they price at a premium because they're trying to get the GMs and the Fords and the Delta Airlines and those kinds of clients. And those guys are used to spending a lot of money, and they usually don't have a solution for the smaller advertiser. What's happened is there are all of these ad networks that are connected in there. And so they have enough volume where they can go buy into a platform like that. And so like the guy, I think I mentioned to you guys earlier, the guy that I work with in Portland, main reason I work with him is that he has a buying desk, an ad buying desk. And so I work with him and we buy campaigns for people through his buying desk. And we'll buy, well, Germana just ran a campaign targeted at Hispanic speaking individuals who are looking for a career in heavy equipment and construction. And we ran an ad on streaming video for Germana. It was a small campaign, but it was really cool. Only on like Spanish language stations, Spanish language streaming video. And that's the kind of targeting you were never able to do before. I mean, good luck going to TV guys and saying, I need to reach a Hispanic speaking audience who are interested in construction. So that world has changed pretty significantly too. So I would imagine we're going to see some shake up in the TV world too. Print's not great. Our market's funny with radio because we have so much commuting normally that radio has actually stayed very strong in this particular market in comparison to other places in the country. And that's always been the case in Fredericksburg. And I honestly don't know that that's ever going to really go away. But I've been impressed at how strong radio has stayed. I used to be a radio skeptic, and I've kind of, to be fair, I do a lot of work with the guys at B101 now, and I know those guys, and so I'm able to talk to them and understand what's going on in the world. And I'm impressed, by how they've been able to maintain. Well, I'm curious to hear from you guys. Like, how are you feeling like how are things going with you in this, and more importantly, I think, what do you think things are going to look like when things open up? We heard at the beginning of the virus and quarantine, I did have some friends who said, remember what happened right after the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic, the Roaring '20s. And so I guess my question is, because I think you guys are a big barometer for the local economy, do you think we're going to see Roaring '20s? Do you think it's still too uncertain to know? Nobody wants to commit.
Are you talking specifically from the advertising perspective, or are you talking about just the market in general?
I think the market in general.
I think it's going to be the Roaring '20s. I think we're already living it. You weren't on the call for the initial tech meeting. We had one of our agents got 14 offers on one house last week. The buyers are out there. We live in a very blessed area in that a lot of our people are essential because they either work for government agencies or they provide professional services. And by and large, those worker populations haven't reaped any unemployment consequences as a result of COVID. They're full steam ahead. One of the things that Amanda Elrod said was that, even in the higher priced categories and in the non-traditional kinds of homes like farms and even land, acres of land, not just a half acre, everything is selling well. I think our area is primed to come out of this strong in terms of real estate. What do you think, Michael?
You're muted, Michael.
You're muted.
I was just saying that I agree. I mean, we're like you say, we're seeing it already. The buyers that are need to get out there are out there and they're looking, and as well as the sellers who really have to get on the market now. They're trying to get on the market now. But once things are a little more normalized with getting out with whatever the restrictions are as far as masks and that type of thing, I think people are going to be out in droves trying to do the moving that they didn't do before. So, because like I was going to say, we still have the Amazon effect that I saw rather in Washington State. They're still building their buildings, and those people are going to be moving. So,
yep. Are there areas in the market that you feel like are sort of the next growth areas? I mean, I feel like I'm hearing more and more people looking at King George as an option that wouldn't have been the case 4 or 5 years ago.
I haven't really worked that market yet. But as I look at the prices from here, Woodbridge area down to Stafford, I think it's going to push those employees down further south. And then I know Richmond's expanding too. So those people are going to have to go north or south from Richmond in order to find homes.
And then you run into the broadband issues the more rural you get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so I'm going to chime in with Lauren. Lauren, I don't see a great deal of people moving into the outskirts at this point. I think that Ruther Glen is the kiss of death right now. Landor and those subdivisions down there have so many homes available for sale, and I'm talking way affordable. I'm talking 200,000 and below, and wow. you can't give them away.
Wow.
So from my perspective, I'm not seeing a lot in the outskirts happening at this time. That could change.
Right.
One of the things that we've been talking about, because as I mentioned to you guys, this campaign that we've got open on my screen, so GWI Connect, their whole goal, their whole sort of purpose for being, they're part of the George Washington Regional Commission, but GWI Connect specifically, their goal is to reduce the number of cars on I-95, and for commuting, not necessarily all I-95, but obviously that's the main focus. And that's been an interesting discussion because obviously right now there's very little commuting, and so the road looks great, but we're very concerned that when things normalize a little bit, it's going to be an absolute nightmare traffic-wise, more so than pre-COVID, because I think people are going to be much less inclined to slug north than they had been. I mean, who wants to get in a car with somebody you don't know when you're not entirely sure that things have cleared out entirely? And
or who's going to pick up anybody that's trying to slug? Because my wife works in DC, and then hey, nope, you can we'll pay the extra or whatever it takes. Not picking up anybody.
Exactly, not pick up anybody. Do you really want to be in a van with, even though you know the people in the van? Are you comfortable in your van pool that you were running before? So, one of the things that it's funny because their budget, they're just sort of burning through some budget that was in the fiscal year budget that needed to be spent. But most of their advertising is on hold right now until we figure out what we're going to do. But, we were telling them, look, you're going to have the messaging about the health implications and staying safe, commuting. I said that it's almost like you're starting from scratch, and from a real estate implication, that whole commuter effect and what it does to our market, I'm curious to see how that plays out. Are people are they going to be looking further north just because they don't, they know they're going to be driving? Is there going to be more working at home, to sort of deal with that? So I am curious to see how that plays out, but because we are almost positive that the commuter rates and the traffic rates going to be really, really brutal once things ease up a little bit, by fall.
Good point.
Chris, one of the things that's been really helpful to us is that NAR has really been on top of it in terms of providing information. And we have, I guess, information or fact sheets available that we can put in with seller and buyer, and even on our company website that show, the precautions that are being taken and the showing instructions or whatever the case may be. And that may be an avenue for you guys in terms of finding what your industry, what the commuter industry says about how best to protect the public and drive an ad campaign around that.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious from you guys too, and it sort of keys on a question that came up earlier. Who are there some new, let's call them shiny objects? Are there new sites or new platforms out there in your world that you feel like might be the next big thing?
I think they all are. It's like Michael said earlier, you try something out to figure out whether it's going to be the best fit. And then, you flip a coin and say, yes, I'm going to keep her. No, it's going in the trash. But I don't have any particular ones that are rising to the top.
Right.
Yeah, I don't either. Just
are you guys spending on Zillow at all?
No.
I'm not. I don't hate Zillow, but they are a competitor. So for me, I just don't. I don't spend on Zillow because of that. I do have a profile, and because I know I have to be there. That's where the audience is. But for me to give them my money, just doesn't make sense to me.
Gotcha.
They have a ton of investors already. I'll spend money somewhere else.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I remember back in the day, like I said, when Realtor.com was around and Zillow was not, not a factor. They were pretty expensive to do a high level of advertising, and then Zillow came in, and Zillow's whole goal was to disenfranchise you guys. I mean, you know that when they built it, that was the business plan. And we've talked about it before. I think when we've done some of these meetings, a lot of people don't know though that the founders of Zillow were the founders of Expedia.
Exactly.
Who, basically threw a hand grenade in the travel agent industry, and then they decided they were going to do the same thing. And realtors, to their extreme credit, kept it from happening. I mean, Zillow got big, but they did not succeed at anywhere near the same level that they did with Expedia, with the travel agent industry. And I think a part of that is that the structure of the real estate world, you guys have the ability to be somewhat nimble on how you do your marketing, and this idea of, okay, we're going to market here, and then we're going to market here, and we're going to change gears was important. And then I also think that they vastly underestimated the value of those relationships that you guys had built and continue to build. And that, that's still in my mind when I look, as an outside observer, when I look at people who do what you guys do, the folks that I know who are going to succeed, they typically have a couple things. Number one, they've really got the idea of sort of managing relationships and maintaining relationships nailed down, and they understand that piece. And the second thing is that they do understand that they are marketers, and they're asking questions like you guys are, because they understand that that's a big piece of what they do is figure out where their clients need to be at any given time, and willing to tell the client, don't buy print ads, or don't buy this. We need to do this. We need to go this direction. And this is going to be more successful for us.
Yeah.
There has been a change.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say some insight that I had was Bill Riss, who's some of his elbow grinding people. They were in a meeting with the COO of Zillow, and he actually told them that he was going to get rid of real estate agents. So I think that part of the reason they haven't been able to destroy the industry, because he actually came out and said he was going to do that. He's going to do the same thing he did to the travel agency. I'm like, why do you don't tell somebody that in a meeting? I mean, you may have that intention, but now you let them know. If they weren't aware before, they are definitely aware now. That kind of slowed things down.
You need somebody at your shoulder who says, "Don't say that out loud."
Right.
I still think that our industry is continuing to push back on Zillow. One of the most recent changes that happened, Zillow was allowing agents to manually enter listings onto their site as coming soon outside the MLS system. And Zillow has come out and said, as a matter of fact, they've stopped doing it. I mean, they've already stopped it. And I'm not sure what the factors are that went into play on making that change happen. But in terms of leveling the playing field for all real estate agents, I think it's a really good thing that they've done. So, but I think it's pushback.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think they're deciding that they need to work with us instead of trying to defeat us, and they're seem to have more of a relationship with us as opposed to adversarial.
I agree. Right. Chris, is there ever a time, and you know my mother owns the company, and she's obviously older than I am, so print is still very much a big part of her life. Is there ever a time that a print ad is better than a digital ad?
Well, I think you have to look at the demographics of the paper and figure out what those are. I mean, if you're selling a, let's say you're selling a single level listing that doesn't have stairs, and it would be a great move-in for somebody looking to, to move into a retirement property. If you have a retirement community, if you have a downsize, so condos, people who are looking to get out of a bigger place, though I think that those sorts of properties lend themselves to print advertising in a way that others do not. I'd probably never put a Idlewild place in the paper, but I live in Brayhead Woods. Some of those there are a few single levels in Brayhead Woods that would be great for move in somebody, retirement, that kind of thing. I would consider putting one of those in print. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of knowing the audience there. And I do think that audience, just the nature of the beast, that audience tends older, and actually tends toward retirement age now. And so that's where I would go if I was going to spend on print. I would take my inventory and I would be very strategic about it and say, look, if we're going to do some print, that we got to be very strategic about what we're buying in print.
Yeah, I would think luxury market would tend to lend itself more to print too.
Sure.
Not only is the subject more appealing, it's also on the market longer, so you have a little more chance to get a return on your investment. Yeah, and it still looks like a good coffee table thing. Even if the place is sold, if it's somebody can come in and take a look at that, I would pick it up. So.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is the readership of print media higher on weekends than it is during the week?
Well, generally, yes. Generally, you tend to, as subscribers have churned at most papers, they tend to churn out their weekday subscribers, and a lot of those guys will stay on the weekends. And actually, that's a really good question, because the papers have economic incentive to keep Sunday subscribers. All of those inserts that go in the paper, the way they get paid for that is the number of people who are subscribers on Sunday. So that's why sometimes, how if you drop your subscription, they call you back and they'll give you 5 days for free if you keep the weekend, or they'll do promotions like that. The reason they're doing that is they need to maintain what they call their insert audience on Sundays. And so the more they have on Sundays, the better. So they tend to have more distribution on Sundays. The other thing to think about with the Freelance Star is they do what they call, well, what we would call in the industry total market coverage, but you probably know it as the stars. It's the little paper that shows up in your driveway once a week. That gets distributed all through the mail across the whole market. So it actually goes out to way more people. There are some people who think that is the newspaper. And so if I was going to put money in print, I would be putting it in the stars. And I never would have, I wouldn't not have ever recommended that 5-10 years ago. But now it's like a lot of people do read through that real quick and see what's there. They look to see if their kids' school news is in there. And you can buy ads in it pretty cheap usually.
Is that something you get if you get the normal paper? Or?
No, you only get it if you're
Okay.
not a subscriber.
Mm.
Yeah, it only goes out to people who are not subscribers because they repurpose the news that was in the printed in the subscriber paper.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen one. So
I'm
that's news
surprised.
to me.
All right, and
I'll
you're
try
not a
and save
subscriber?
my next one, Lauren, and bring it to you.
Yeah, yeah.
That'd be great.
It has a lot of inserts. The news, it's only 4 or 5 pages. It's not very big. And mine
Wow.
actually gets delivered through the mail.
So that publication is a vehicle for grocery insert ads. That's the reason that product exists.
Okay.
You have to, you need something to wrap those grocery inserts in. And so right now it's like Aldi, Lidl, Giant, and then you'll get a few other advertisers that insert in there. And they typically, I think it comes out, what, Wednesday?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Wednesday.
And that, because that's when all the new grocery ads come in. Yeah. There's a very clear economic reason that product gets distributed. It's to give a larger number of distribution for those grocery ads. Because once those, we were talking about the economics, once those insert ads go away, it's
Newspaper's
bad.
gone.
It's bad. Yeah. Yeah. That's the last life preserver.
Okay. We do about the only ads. Now, obviously, we did a little more for Mother's Day, but about the only print ads we do are for open houses, and they typically go in the weekend paper. But
Yeah.
there's no reason we couldn't get them prepared in a way that they go into the stars.
Yeah. And well, and think about it, people do like to plan their weekends. So if you could get that out in front of them a little bit earlier, it might not be a bad idea.
Okay. I always enjoy. I set aside anytime you're going to speak. I clear my schedule for it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure listening to you. My first time meeting you, but good
Yeah,
listening to you.
I hope to meet you in person.
Yeah, likewise.
So where is your office?
I'm a co-banker out of Stafford.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do work with Stafford Tourism and Economic Development. So
Okay.
I do a lot up that way, helping those guys out. So that's an interesting market. I always tell people Stafford is 2 markets, not 1. Because if you're in South Stafford, you are not North Stafford.
Right. I agree.
Well,
All
thank
right,
you so
guys.
much, Chris. Do I have
Absolutely.
permission to use the recording to share with other members in case they are interested?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You might want to cut out the paper parts about the newspaper if any of the newspaper people get a hold of it. I hate it. Yeah, that was a world I lived in for most of my career, and it kills me. But it's reality, and I also know that a lot of the things that have happened in that industry were brought on by the industry. It wasn't just changing circumstance.
Right.
There were some key decisions that were made many years ago that, newspapers could have been Amazon. They could have been Zillow. They could have been a lot of those things. And they sort of opted for the easy path at the time. And they're reaping the punishment of that now. Cool. Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure we'll see you again in a couple months, one way or another. I know we're doing an economic panel mid-June with the economist from the Virginia Realtors, and she always gives us great info. So you'll see more
Cool.
about that as we get closer. It'll be good info if you want to tune
Okay.
in.
Yeah, great. Sounds good.
All right, good to see
All
everyone.
right.
Cool.
Take care. See you
Have a
guys.
great month.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.